So, what has Excelsior's domain been picking up from eBay? Let's have a look. Now then, a little while ago, I did a video around the KnightsEnd Batman, who was in fact not Bruce Wayne, it was Azrael. And on the left here, we've got a little Azrael figure, which is, I think, an eagle moss figure originally. And on the right, we have Azbat, which is the sort of ultimate version of Azrael's Batman armor, which he developed over time as he became more and more like Azrael and less like Batman. But I've actually shown you these before, and what I want to do now is unpackage and have a look at a couple of other examples of Azrael / Azbat that I picked up, because it was really tricky for me to find good looking sort of versions of Azrael. I can actually show you another one here as well that I've got, and this is his sort of halfway house. This is what he looked like when he was starting to make the bat suit more armoured. And I'd say this is the sort of thing that I've looked at more closely in another video. But originally, as you can see, he sort of retained the more normal bat colours, albeit with a bit of gold. And this is a McFarlane toy, part of the DC Multiverse series. And as you can see, it's another really nice, big action figure. Very well articulated. I've never actually taken him out of the box, and I'm not proposing to now, but just to give you an idea that, this is a figure that you do see several versions of over time. It just took me a little while to actually sort of figure out which versions were best and to sort of track him down, basically, because I've always liked the idea of Batman having a bit more armour, and of course in his more modern iterations he does tend to be far more armoured, as I understand it, sort of under his suit. It's quite subtle armour, it's not quite as obvious as this armour, but he has gone in that direction, ironically enough. But this was kind of mid-90s when Azrael and Azbats and so on were a thing. So I'm going to have a look at these. Now, the first one I'm going to look at is a Kenner Batman Night Force Ninjas Azrael from 1998, which is this one. I haven't actually unpackaged them yet, so I'm going to be doing this for the first time with you as I get them out and have a look. Now, I know that Kenner took over the Batman animated series figures from Urkel at one point. So anyone can tell me any more about the backstory to that? I'd be sort of curious to hear it, because it's a fairly obvious thing for Kenner to do, but I wasn't aware of them having done sort of much in the way of superhero stuff before then. I could be completely wrong, but obviously I know them more from things like Star Wars. So I guess this is a more modern version of Kenner, that's interesting. I'm saying he's interesting because immediately I'm noticing that there's no knee articulation there. I don't think. He's got some very sort of solid plastic legs. Let's pop this up a little bit. Let's have a look at him. So he's got sort of a very plasticky cape that will peel off quite happily. That's a classic Azrael sort of detachable fiery blade. But he's very, very sort of meh in terms of articulation. That feels odd. His shoulder, it almost feels like it's got a sort of ratchet action to it, but I don't know. And his other arm doesn't really seem to want to move at all. That's bizarre. That can't be right. I wonder if someone's glued that in or something. Oh no, there it is. There it is. It's just a bit stiff. Okay, got him. I've freed him up. But again, there's no articulation on the arm at all. I quite like the detailing on the chest. They've at least tried to put put this sort of the emblems on him of the Order of St. Dumas. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I suspect it's probably pretty much there. So this was his basic. If you remember this little sort of figurine that I showed you, this guy here. This is what this is supposed to represent. But I would say that the figurine is actually better than the toy, ironically. The mask colours are similar, but his mask is far too bright red, I think. Although, in fairness though, you know, the comics did have him as a very sort of yellow red, and actually the detailing on the figures does look pretty much the same. So actually they are pretty close together. Let's pop his hood back on. Yeah, they're not actually a million miles off each other, funnily enough. So actually, I'd have to say that the Kenner one is not an unreasonable version of him. It's just that it's completely lacking in articulation, which is a bit of a shame. His head does move, actually, but that is about all that can be said for him. So, yeah, he's not exactly. I mean, I'm glad I didn't sort of race to try and pick it up or anything, but it's. I suppose it's all right as an action figure goes, but it's just. From sort of late 90s kind of era, I would have expected a little bit more. Perhaps I'm being, I don't know, perhaps is that unrealistic of me? Let me know in the comments. But it's cool they made a figure of him anyway, I suppose. At least he got a little bit more airtime, so to speak. And I suppose, thinking about it, that's not that long after he was first in the comics. Because I think the actual character of Azrael did get introduced not long before the KnightsEnd run started. So, you know, that's kind of era appropriate. Now, this, if I remember rightly, is actually Azrael in the Bat armour. And this is the Kenner Legends of Batman KnightsEnd 94 edition of him, I believe. Now, this is a very sort of toy gimmicky type version of him, I believe. Okay, so he's inside a bag, inside bubble wrap. Let's pop him out. Let's have a look at that. Now this has this hilarious disc shooter thing attached to his arm, which is not. I mean, ironically, I can almost see what they were doing with that, in the sense that he did shoot shurikens from his wrist gauntlets. So that is kind of an homage, I suppose, to the design. But again, this one you'll immediately see is intended to be a sort of version of the one that I showed you in the box. So this is him on the way to becoming Azbat. But it's not. He's quite a lot smaller than the other Kenner one, actually, just sort of overall size wise. The mask isn't as well done as the other one. It's not bad. It's recognisable. Looks like his cape could come off if it wanted to. And again, it's quite a sort of solid plastic cape, plasticky vinyl sort of cape. But again, his legs are in this weird stance, and there's no knee joint. So it's kind of, he's sort of stuck doing whatever that stance supports, which isn't a lot from the looks of it. I'm not entirely sure how he's supposed to stand up unless you actually use his cape to prop him up at the back like that. It's kind of odd. And he's got this ridiculous sized disc shooting thing. I haven't got any discs for it, but it would have shot that out. So again, it's a bit of a wasted opportunity, really, that, isn't it? From a why? I mean, if you're gonna give him legs, at least give him legs that will actually allow him to stand up, poor bloke. I mean, it's a bit random, that. Just give him straight legs. If you're not going to articulate them, at least let him stand up. That's really odd, because... So this one from 4 years later, as you can see, it's huge compared to the smaller version of it. So that's really... What a strange choice. I suppose he's a more conventional action figure kind of size, but, you know, it's just a bit odd considering he's actually a Batman, effectively. You know, you think they'd have put a bit more effort into it. How odd. I mean, you know, his accuracy isn't bad. He's got a sort of utility belt on his leg, that's there, which is what I'd expect from a from an Azbat kind of perspective in the earliest version of him, but it's just a bit meh. I mean, I kind of expected him to be a bit meh when I picked it up, to be honest, because it clearly wasn't like a premium toy. It was just a sort of, pocket money-esque kind of toy. But for the sake of sort of 4 years difference, I suppose it's kind of interesting in that sense that you can see the change in the approach to the characters over those 4 years. You've got sort of mid-90s compared with late 90s here with the Azrael. I can't even get the Azrael to stand up now. He requires 2 hands at all times, it seems. But I think actually, because the early Azrael armour figure, I think is actually more striking in many respects than the early Azbat's figure is, because it's not a compromise. It's his own character, whereas he's kind of halfway between Batman and Azbat. So, I'm just trying to find some way to stand him up. That's about right. Okay. But he kind of needs his cape to prop himself up. It's really odd. It's really odd. But I did like the idea of a Batman that did rely a little bit more on technology, but then as the real Batman then demonstrated to him, the suit actually slowed him down a lot. So as long as you could find some way to disable the suit ultimately, then it took all of his advantages were basically gone, and he'd kind of be trapped in an armoured suit, and he was also more extreme than Batman, and so Bruce Wayne had to reclaim the mantle of the Bat from him, because he was sort of tarnishing, Batman's reputation and everything else. So it was an interesting storyline for the comic, but personally, I prefer the toy on the right, particularly for display purposes, as against the one on the left. I mean, I'm sure I could take the dash shooter off his arm, but even then, he lacks the detail of the Azbat's, the Azrael figure. So certainly sort of better without the oversized disc launcher on his arm, I think. But it's still, I think I've still got to give it to the Azrael figure there, really. Out of the two of them, got to give it to Azrael. So yeah, that's those two. If you've got any other suggestions for sources for the sort of the KnightsEnd figures, I'd be intrigued to hear if any others were done, but I would imagine I've kind of covered the bases there now, unless there were more sort of Kenner ones that I'm not aware of. So as I say, let me know in the comments if you do know of any more. I'd be interested to have a look, but I would hope for a little bit more articulation from some of them. So that's it for this one. Cheers for now.